All right, guys, we are back for the second episode of this week. As you know, there was a double release because of the circumstances. But yeah, we're going to be doing the 15th episode of Attack on Titan this time, reviewing, discussing as usual. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this sometimes the show has these like sort of flashback episodes where they're mostly flashback, and I think they're pretty good at adding like texture to the characters we have, specifically Zeke in this case, and maybe a little bit of Grisha as well.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I thought this was a really good episode. It made me feel more connected to Zeke and his motivations, and just kind of revealed Zeke and his motivations as well.
Yeah, I think the flashback episodes are really good at kind of giving us some background into what's happening and explaining the drive behind different characters. So I think they're always a welcome addition. And the fact that it didn't take up the full episode was also really good because we got to see what's happening there, and then we got to see a little bit of not present day, but things that are happening more recently. So that was good.
Mhm. Yeah, I think this like first part does a lot to show sort of Zeke's mentality and the it goes to explain, I think, some of his actions later in the series. So we see that when Zeke goes over to his grandparents' house, he has to lie to them basically and say that, yeah, his dad is teaching him about like the horrors of the Eldians, and all that type of stuff. And also, when he goes back home, he has to sort of listen to his dad talk about like how great the Eldian Empire is and that they never did anything wrong. And he sort of just smiles and nods. So like from birth, Zeke has been used to just sort of like going along with things because they're like good for him in the moment. And this definitely gets taken to the extreme when he's older and he like has to kill a bunch of Eldians. Uh, just to go along with it, right? Because he doesn't want to get outed. But yeah, I think that that like provides some good justification for why Zeke is able to do those things later in the series.
Yeah, I think as you said, Zeke's kind of motivation is pretty apparent in this episode, and we get to see just what caused all the different things that he's done. You know, on one end, he has his parents brainwashing him to believe that the Eldians never did anything wrong, and on the other hand, it's the rest of the world and the people he's surrounded in telling him that the Eldians are the worst and that they don't deserve life. And I think something important to note here, though, is as I talked about in the last episode, the true like antagonist or just bad people in this show are really hard to determine because Grisha and Zeke's mom's motivation are to just free the Eldian. So they have a positive motivation. They have gone about it in a pretty brutal way, you know, treating the son this way. But at the end of the day, they are doing what they think is right. And then we have Zeke, who is also a kid, you know, and he later on we find out is also fighting for Eldian's freedoms in a also pretty drastic way. Is that method morally okay? Is pretty up to the viewer, but I think it's interesting the way that they can manipulate these characters into not making it so black and white as to what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah. And I think that, the show keeps on trying to show that the truth is somewhere in the middle. And
Mhm.
I think that Zeke is one of the few people who gets this. Because yeah, he's an Eldian, so obviously he understands like how screwed over Eldians are, but he also understands like the limit to which or just how bad it can be when you go full restorationist mode and like try to indoctrinate your own kid into it in such a bad way. I'm sure there was a good way to indoctrinate him into it, but that wasn't what Grisha and Dina were doing.
Yeah, I agree. So the other big thing going on in this episode is the whole interaction with young Zeke and then the previous Beast Titan. So we see them kind of bonding over playing catch, and over time, Zeke kind of looks to him as a type of father figure, and he ends up telling the previous Beast Titan that his parents are part of the Restorationists, and we see him try to protect Zeke and try to find a way to spare him. And over the years, they grow a lot closer. And Zeke learns a lot more about the background of the Eldians and their powers. And the previous Beast Titan tells him that the founding Titan has the ability to change how the Eldians' bodies work. And from that, they formulate a plan to stop Eldians from reproducing. And that is kind of their way of resolving this conflict. And that is the ultimate goal that Zeke has been working to for all this time. So,
Yeah. Honestly, part of me feels like I should have seen something like this coming, because the show initially presents itself as this like very fantastical world of things that are very different from what we know. But then we get that huge reveal at the end of season 3, right? That's like, okay, we're sort of in a world that we kind of know. But then, in season 4, we're talking about the rumbling a lot, right? Like being Zeke and Aaron's big plan. We're going to use the rumbling, which is this very like sort of fictitious, maybe it could be compared to like nuclear bombs or something, but like it's pretty fictitious that these Titans are going to walk over and raise the world. But then we find out that like Zeke's ultimate plan, and possibly Aaron's, we can talk more about that ultimate plan, is this like euthanization, like essentially eugenics thing. Which yeah, like is just very real, like a thing that really has happened. And yeah, I think the show does a good job at kind of misleading us into thinking that, oh, it's just going to be some sort of fantasy world, crazy stuff's going to happen, but then bringing back that like the issues these characters are dealing with are like very much real world things. Like there are people in the real world who have thought the same way as these characters before.
yeah, I agree. I think it's a really good way of doing that. And yeah, we will get into a little bit more as to what their plan is in a bit. But I do think an interesting thing to note is that the previous Beast Titan, I forget his name. It's somewhere in the episode. I'm sure that he said it a few times, but he refers to the fact that he's been researching the history of Titans. And I think this is going to be kind of the lead in to the background of the Titans. I think we will get a eventual deep dive into just the background, how they came to be. And I think it'll be through at least Zeke at this point, because he has all the memories of the previous Beast Titan who has spent all this time researching the history of Titans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Zeke knows probably the most about Titans out of everyone in the world right now.
Yeah, I think even Aaron said that last episode, just the fact that he knows more than Marley as a whole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One more thing I think about, like both the motivation of Zeke and I'm gonna say Mr. Cassava, but I feel like that's wrong.
Something like
The motivation of the two to like form that relationship with each other. So the scene where Mr. Cassava is telling Zeke to like rat out his parents pretty much is before we find out about like Mr. Cassava's backstory, but it's totally influenced by that, right? Like what he's about to see is like another family get wiped out because of like this stupid racism that exists in Marley. And he doesn't want to see it happen again. Like he's definitely formed like a father son like bond with Zeke, and now he's about to see Zeke get totally killed. So he's willing to like make Zeke do anything to stop that from happening, pretty much.
Yeah, definitely. I think this scene as well, where Zeke rats out his parents, is really, really well done. Like it was extremely eerie and very like brutal in the way that they painted his parents' reaction and his. And then we see the scene where Mr. Cassava reaches down and just hugs him and tries to comfort him. Yeah, just a really, really well animated scene, I think.
Yeah, and we get this age up of Zeke. And yeah, then they talk about the euthanization plan pretty much. But yeah, it's just interesting because Zeke has been this sort of mysterious character for so long, but so much of Zeke's motivation came from just being with this guy who like treated him like a real person and treated him like the kid he was, who was a father figure to him. And like a lot of Zeke's motivation must stem from his like hate for Grisha for never like being like this.
Yeah, and that explains his line back in, was it season 3, like the final episodes, where he was telling Aaron like they were both victims of their father and how he was going to come and save Aaron. All those lines, in retrospect, make a lot more sense now because we know the way Grisha was to Zeke as a young boy.
Yeah. So we finally see the meeting between Aaron and Zeke, and definitely not in its entirety, but we do get at least the gist of what the two talked about. So it seems that Yelena, back in Paradise, told Eren like what Zeke's true plan is, right? To like euthanize all of the Eldians. And Eren sort of shares like that he saw some crazy stuff in his dad's memories that
Mhm.
uh, kind of makes him down with this plan, and that he agrees that if they were never born, they would have never faced all this trouble. My question is, do you believe that Eren is fully down with this plan, or do you think that Eren has something else up his sleeve? Because to me, in the previous episode, Eren's whole thing was about freedom. Um, and I am free. I'm doing this all on my own choice. He was talking a lot about like not being influenced or manipulated by people. But now, or like, if he's down with like the euthanization plan, that I don't think that stands in direct counter to it, but it feels like if he was radicalized, I guess, by the euthanization plan, then he would be talking about like, oh, I'm ending suffering, I'm saving the Eldians. But he's talking more about this freedom thing, which makes me feel that there's something more there.
Yeah, okay, I think there's two ways of explaining this. If he is on board with the plan and is planning on just straight up making it so that there will not be any more reproduction of Eldians, he has a line at the end where he says something along the lines of never being born is like the ultimate form of I forget what he says. Let me try to find it. But essentially he's saying like that's the best way that it could have been. Like not being born is the greater salvation. So that in a way it frees all the future children of being oppressed by the Marleyans because they're never born, so they would never feel that oppression. And it frees the Eldians that are currently alive because then they can continue living out their lives, die, and then be at peace.
Mhm.
However, you touched on the fact that Eren might not be on board with this, and there was a line in earlier in this episode that Mr. Kasalov or whatever his name is, the previous Beast Titan, says something along the lines of, "When the Founding Titan is touching you, he's at liberty to do what he wants. So you have to choose someone that you trust." And I think that line right there could be indicative of the fact that Eren does have his own plan. And when he found out that touching Zeke would allow him to manipulate things, he's going to go along with Zeke's plan. And then at the point where he has to make it so that they can't reproduce anymore, instead, he's going to do his own plan. And I think that would be something that would make sense of the story and explain why he's been going along with Zeke for all this time because he needs Zeke's cooperation.
And one more thing on this final bit. I just kind of put this together right now, but in this specific shot, I'll put an end to 2,000 years of Titan domination.
Mhm.
Is that the meaning of the first episode's title? To you, 2,000 years in the future? Is the dream that Eren has like a message from Ymir or something? Uh, yeah.
Yeah, it does seem like we're going to be getting into more Titan history. And I think that lines like this and the title of the first episode will end up making sense towards the end. And we will get to learn more about Ymir and all the stuff that's happened in the past. So I think, yeah, that probably is what this is happening or what this is referring to. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. We see in the end Zeke kamikaze his ass, sending Levi
Well,
flying.
I'm still a little bit unsure about like why did he do that?
Yeah, I'm also unsure. I think he thinks he can survive that.
Right. That's kind
Um,
of what I was thinking.
which,
Because we see him sort of fall down
yeah,
in his
I
like
mean,
upper
he was pretty
torso.
messed up by the previous explosion, and he survived that. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that he survives this. And why else would he have said that final line?
Yeah, because he says it saying like, "Oh, I'm doing something good right now."
Yeah,
Um,
unless I mean, there was a brief thought that I had that he was just gonna roll the dice and hope that the Titan gets passed on to someone random, so it
hmm.
wouldn't be at the choice of uh, Commander Pixis. But I think that that would be a lot of like it add a lot of time to the series that I don't think that they have. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. The royal blooded Titan has to make an appearance.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Okay. Here's my other take.
Mhm.
Maybe Zeke and Aaron talked a little bit more, and they said that if Zeke gets down bad like this, um, Aaron has a backup plan, and it's like Historia and her baby or something.
Yeah.
And that they're just gonna eat someone else. And so um, this is Zeke saying like, I don't want Paradis, aka not Aaron, to have control of a royal titan, and so I'm just gonna, you know, I'm gonna keep going with the plan B that we decided earlier.
Yeah, that actually could very well be true because I mean, at this point, then the Titans should pass on some baby, which wouldn't be very helpful at all for Paradis, and it wouldn't hinder Aaron and his continuation plan. And then Aaron also has two other Titans of royal, or two other people of royal blood. He has Historia and Historia's baby, which I still think is his baby. But yeah, so I think that it wouldn't be too crazy for this to be the end of Zeke Yeager, but it would be
Yeah,
a crazy end, I have to say.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I think that's everything. Did you have anything else to add?
I don't think so.
This final episode should be pretty crazy, and the wait's gonna suck. But we'll see you guys next week. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you then.